I'm Darlene Hansen, and I am with Disability Voices United. I act as a support trainer for the communication skills of anybody who needs them, and work closely with Tim Jin in our empowerment team. Nina, I've spotlighted you.
Looks like we have a lot of gamers today. My name is Tim and I am the director of the team.
Visual, for the visually impaired. I forget, and I gotta practice it because I always forget. So again, I'm Darlene, and I am a I guess I'm a senior citizen. I don't know. People say that maybe, but don't feel like it. Anyways, have shoulder length gray hair, red glasses. On my face, I am a white American and female, and I am wearing a black sweater with have a green background that says Disability Voices United behind me. William, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm William, and I'm a student intern with DVU. A quick visual description. I'm a Hispanic Filipino male young adult with short black hair, brown eyes, and I type to communicate. Thank you for making the time to be here today.
Nina.
Okay, hi everybody. My name is Nina Spiegelman. I'm the policy director for DVU. I got one of those green back DVU backgrounds like Darlene's. And I'm unlike Darlene, who's like, I guess she called herself middle-aged, but I'm like super old and have kind of gray taupe, weird hair color. And I'm wearing a Cal Berkeley sweatshirt. And I'm just super excited about today because, like, as Tim loves to give me a really hard time for, I wouldn't call myself a gamer, but I did love that show that was based on a game called The Last of Us. So I feel like I'm a game adjacent. And I'm super thrilled with this. It's going to be great. It's going to be so great. And I'm thank you all for coming.
Very good. I'm an old person now, but back in the day, we had the Atari 2600, and I think me and my brothers were the first ones on the block to get a system from Fed Company. Remember that department store, Darlene?
Fedco? Fedco, not Fed Company. Fedco. But yes.
I broke many joysticks with my feet and many game controllers, playing Mario Kart on the Nintendo, and broke too many keyboards on my computers, trying to play racing games, and I loved racing games and still do. Games have certainly changed over the years since I got started. At one point, the gaming industry was making more revenue than Hollywood and the entertainment industry. But what about people with disabilities and gaming? Gaming has become a part of our culture now. I have friends that live across the world, and we play a round of golf every so often and catch up. And I've broken many trackballs, trying to slice my swing. I would like to introduce our speaker today. Cheryl Mitchell is the User Research Director at AbleGamers. AbleGamers is a non-profit organization dedicated to improving the lives of people with disabilities through the power of video games. They help bring accessibility to all who want to game and work with developers to make the games accessible to many because gaming also helps with social skills. Cheryl, the floor is all yours.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here. I'll describe myself. I'm a middle-aged African-American woman who wears glasses and has shoulder-length hair. And I have some caricature artwork behind me in the background. It's very nice to be here. I'm going to share my screen and start the presentation. Welcome, everybody. I know I only have about 20 minutes, but I wanted to give you a broad overview of what we'll talk about today. We'll talk about some statistics. We'll talk about accessibility in gaming, what we do, what AbleGamers does, specifically the user research. I'm the director of user research. One of our services is the player panels, where we recruit players with disabilities across the world to help partake in research that we do as we collaborate with video game companies. We work with video game companies inside the US and outside the US. And then, of course, I'll talk about the impact. And if you could go to the next slide. I have a couple of interesting facts that I wanted to share. There's 66% of Americans. There's more than 215 million people that actually play video games on a regular. And there's 88% of players that play video games that say they bring together different types of people. As Tim had mentioned earlier, video games bring a sense of community. That's wholeheartedly a part of the AbleGamer mission, that we strongly believe in video game and the impact they have with people with disabilities, because historically people with disabilities are marginalized and they may often be at home. And video games is a mechanism where people can connect and reach out and have friends and social connections all across the world. Another stat I wanted to bring attention to, that 83% of players agree that video games create a feeling of community, and people with disabilities are 51% more likely to be socially isolated than non-disabled persons. And out of all of the gaming and the research that we've done and books that we've researched, it says that people with disabilities represents 20% of the gaming population. That's why AbleGamers, we've been around for 20 years. We advocate to the video game companies, to museums as well, that look at creating accessible player experiences. And we want to make sure that those accessible player experiences are accessible to everyone. As you know, a lot of things are not accessible. And when we first started with AbleGamers 20 years ago, it was very difficult to talk to the Microsofts, the Sonys, to the major players and explain about accessibility. They just didn't get it. A lot of the video game companies that we work with, they really didn't understand the magnitude of what social isolation looked like until COVID happened. And when they realized what that experience was when they really were connecting the dots and understanding why we were pushing and advocating for accessibility in gaming, and how a lot of the work, a lot of the developers, a lot of the programming that's done is just good universal design practice. It's, in terms of large print, captioning, different things like that. This is just basic stuff that anyone could utilize. It's not just for somebody with a disability. So for the last 10 years, we've been making great strides with working with a lot of organizations, a lot of studios, indie studios as well, where they're really interested in committing to looking at how they can build a better game that more people can play. Next slide. And again, I touched a little bit on this accessibility in gaming, about how things took longer. We've been around for 20 years. Like I said, we're making a lot of strides, but we're still working on making more games accessible. One good thing about AbleGamers, we not just work with video game companies, we also work with hardware. So I don't know if you follow the news, like with the Microsoft controller, the Sony PlayStation adaptive controller, we actually did collaborate with them. We did provide play testers that actually work with them behind the scenes to improve their product. So we're really proud of the work that we do. A lot of work that we do is under non-disclosure agreements, so we can't really talk about the work, but it's exciting when things actually get to market and they actually do reference us, because like I said, there's a lot of work that we're doing behind the scenes that is making an impact in accessibility in gaming. One of the things I did want to talk about was that the Federal Communication Commission is the agency that kind of oversees accessibility in gaming, and they had it's called the Communications and Video Accessibility Act of 2010, where that particular law was mandated to make video games more accessible. There's been legislation that's been on the books for a while now that they're looking at how they can improve video games and make the games more accessible. But as you know, with the federal government, it takes a long time for bills to get passed and for things to get implemented. But there is hope that there'll be more stronger mandates that will make games more accessible in the future. And I just wanted to bring attention to that. Next slide. Barriers to access. There's three main categories that we look at in terms of barriers to access. One being not being able to receive feedback from the game due to sensory impairment. Another is not being able to provide input using a conventional input device due to motor impairment. And another one is not being able to understand how to play the game and what input to provide due to cognitive impairment. Examples of sensory would be not being able to hear a dialogue between game characters or audio cues, such as an explosion, because of a hearing impairment, or unable to see or distinguish visual feedback. Another is examples of sensory is a dialogue between game characters or audio cues, such as an explosion. I'm sorry, I wanted to make sure I could see this. And then motor impairment users who rely upon using switch controllers or eye trackers to interact with games may find it very difficult or impossible to play games that require large amounts of input. And then, of course, cognitive impairment. It's people with learning disabilities may have low literacy or combining produce games that are playable. So I just wanted to definitely share some examples with you. Next slide. As Tim had mentioned, our mission, we create opportunities that enable play in order to combat social isolation and foster inclusive communities and improve the quality of life of people with disabilities. We really believe strongly in our mission, and we have different pillars within our organization that address this mission that I want to talk about in the next slide in terms of what we do. These are the different departments of AbleGamers. There's peer counseling, who works with individuals to find solutions to enable play. There's engineering research that creates new controllers and devices to offering unique customized solutions. And then user research is my department, where we bring insights and experiences of individuals with disabilities into the game development process. And then we have professional development, where we teach developers to craft optimal experiences for players with disabilities by providing training. And then lastly, we have what's called community inclusion, where we ensure players with disabilities have the best possible experience by creating powerful social connections. So peer counseling and engineering research work closely together. On one side of our organization, we have people who are interested in getting into the gaming space. If they had an accident or they don't have the adaptive equipment that they need, they can actually apply through an intake process and get on our wait list. Because we're a small organization, we try to support people as best as we can, and we help them create their adaptive workstation that they need. Sometimes it requires them to have customized solutions. And so that's where engineering comes into play, where sometimes they may need within their workstation, they may need some solution that we can create through our 3D printer or something like that. And there's like a whole process. Occupational therapists work within peer counseling, and we work closely with rehab hospitals strategically across the country that we're able to provide support for people who may not be able to get to our offices, which are actually headquartered in West Virginia, but we partner with facilities, some hospitals across the country. We're slowly expanding to more hospitals so that we can provide services to people where they're at versus us having to ship equipment out from West Virginia. We have employees all across the country. And so what we try to do is through our partnerships with rehab facilities, we're able to service people where they're at. User research, like my department in professional development, we work more with the studios and the developers. We have what's called the accessible player experience methodology, where it's based on 22 design patterns that are broken into 2 broad categories, access and design. And so we're able to work with the dev teams to explain how our design patterns can help produce a more accessible game. We have a whole certification training program that studios, museums, even museums, actually professionals that are designing interactive exhibits will actually sign up for and pay for the 2-day certification class. And so professional development and user research work closely together. Community inclusion is once they've received support, we actually have Discord channel groups. We share a lot of information to our players that are a part of our player panel, for example, who actually do play testing for us when opportunities arise. We actually support them by sending out newsletters, and we highlight the most successful features and games through the news. We share a lot of information, and these players are able to connect other players that share the same passion, and organically they grow relationships. So if for example, if they're into Call of Duty, they're actually part of our player panels. They're able to talk amongst themselves and to, like I said, organically have relationships with each other and get to know each other on a totally different level. Next slide. So when we're working with studios and museums, for example, like the Smithsonian or the Boston Museum of Science, we have what's called a develop aid flow. It's called the accessible inclusive design. And basically, these are questions that we walk through potential organizations who are interested in looking at accessible game design. It depends. Sometimes, depending on where they are and how they answer questions, and when we're having our discovery meetings, we direct them to some of our services. For example, if a studio or an indie studio or a large studio is like, hey, we're trying to build this culture of accessibility, we want to have a shared language, we encourage them to sign up for our player panel, sign up for the APX training. But what I also wanted to mention is we have a lot of free resources on our website. So a lot of this curriculum that's based on our accessible player experience practitioner curriculum, all of those design patterns are free on our website. So studios don't have to sign up for the training. Some just enjoy taking the training because we go deeper dive and we're able to provide a whole lot of examples. If developers or part of the development team is stuck, they're able to have that training. But a lot of this information that we have, whether it's research articles, peer-reviewed articles, it's all on our website, which is accessible.games. It's the sister site that's connected to AbleGamers.org. So going back to the slide where we have this aid flow, it just really depends on what players are interested, what the client is interested in doing. So if they're wanting to, if they have a game that they've developed and maybe they want us to test a slice of the game, then they'll be like, well, maybe we'll consider evaluation services, which we can. And so we will look at, we can evaluate the game based on 2 premises. One, we may be looking at the access patterns, or we could be looking at the challenge patterns, which is based on our accessible player framework. And of course, we end up doing tandem research where we're working side by side with their research team to help them test the game, a slice of the game. And what we mean by a slice of the game, it might be a small subset of the game that they'll want us to look at, and we'll be able to write a report and tell them all of the findings that we have based on that particular part of the game, so that they can incorporate changes on a broader level to the whole game. And then, of course, we have player panels where they might just want direct feedback from players with disabilities on a particular part of the game, and or maybe it's hardware where they're developing a new prototype for a remote controller, and they want to test it out. We'll organize players out of our database and provide them with that opportunity. One thing we strongly believe in is fairly compensating our players. We find that it's important, and we stress this with the clients, that these are multi-million-dollar companies, billion-dollar companies, some of them, and it's very important that the work that we're doing, depending on what they're looking for, the level of effort, we make sure that they're fairly compensated. So our policy is that if it's a virtual opportunity, where a lot of our opportunities are virtual, where someone can actually work from the convenience of their own house, if they have the platform, if they have an Xbox, or if they have either platform, whatever they have, VR, depending on the project, they can work from home. Then we have like a minimum threshold of what we pay per hour. And we're really proud of that. We want to make sure that players are fairly compensated. They're not getting like a $25 gift card. They're actually getting a very fair wage based on the work. And all of that work is discussed up front and in writing, so that the players can decide, once we've done some filtering, once the client has determined, hey, we're looking for 10 people that have this particular platform at home and have this type of experience. When we send out the email through our database, we let people know exactly what the opportunity is, how much they would be getting paid, and what's the level of effort in terms of if they're committed to doing the work. We're able to share all that information up front, so that it's a very straightforward process. We operate by statement of work. We have contracts that are signed off with the client. And then, of course, the person the player that's going to be involved with the project is also acknowledges that they're committed to doing the work. So we're really pleased about that. And then, of course, our last part is accessibility consulting. Sometimes the work that they're asking us to do falls outside of the realm of our certification course, or the evaluation services, or the play testing or sensitivity reading work that we're doing. Sometimes it's something different. And so all of that type of work falls into that category. Next slide. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the player panels. We have over probably 700 players in our database. And like I said, we do work with video game companies outside the United States as well. So we're working in all quadrants of the world. We have a recruitment process. It's all through our website. Like I said, the work is either virtual or on-site. With some studios, if the work is very top secret, they will request that these opportunities that the players actually will have to come to their site. Sometimes our on-site work takes place in the LA area. It takes place in Seattle, all in the major markets of where a lot of studios are. It just depends. And like I said, everyone gets paid a fair wage for the work that they're doing. And at the end of the year, we will issue like a 1099 if it exceeds over $600. And it's a great way that players with disabilities are able to provide direct feedback to the actual developers. It's a very unique experience, because normally players who enjoy playing video games, they have this amazing relationship with the developers where they're going to be having insight on what's happening in the game, because all of this work that we do is under NDA. So a lot of times you have to be cognizant that you're under NDA, so you can't talk about it, but you're actually exposed to really interesting games that are going to be coming to market within the next 12 to 18 months. And so it's really exciting that someone who has a disability who can actually share their feedback and actually see that the developers are listening intently, capturing the information that they're sharing so that they can improve the game. And it's actually really refreshing to see that so many of the feedback that we make and the influence that we have in these games are actually transforming the game itself before it comes to market. Next slide. This is just, this slide is showing representation of where we have players like all over. It's just a quick snapshot. It's showing the whole world and some of the organizations that we've worked with. We've worked with Activision Blizzard, Sony PlayStation, Amazon Games, Warner Brothers, Gearbox. We've worked with Netflix. We've worked with all the heavy hitters in the industry. I could list all of the logos on here, Shell Games. It's been really interesting. Our goal is to expand and to do some more work in the educational game space. We've discovered over the last couple of years, we've been interacting with a few video game companies that specialize in ed tech space, but we're realizing that a lot of work got pushed through during the COVID time period that really isn't accessible. And we're really concerned that how some of these game companies actually receive federal funding, but the games were not actually accessible. And so we're making strides within that industry as well, wanting to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to play all of these games. And that's one thing that we're really focused on. And like I said before, we currently have about 700 players within our database right now. And like I said, we work with video studio companies all over the world. We do a lot of work in Europe. We do work in Japan and Asia. We do a lot of work in the United States, and we do work down in South America. Next slide.
Cheryl, before you go on, because you might forget even, but there was a question about the names of the free courses.
Oh, it's what it is I can't see I don't see the questions, but
It's just they're asking if we
Okay.
can write that down, and I'll write it down if you can tell me what to write down.
Sure. Well, if we go to the next slide, where it says accessible.games.com, if you go to that website under, it's broken down into 3 categories. It's APX, which is the accessible player experience. That APX talks about all of the framework, whether the access and the design and the challenge patterns. And that information that we have is free. And you can go through all the different access and challenge patterns right on the website if you want to learn them. Now, if you want to take our certification course, there is a cost associated with that. That's not free, but all of our resources we have posted on our website that anyone can use, if that makes sense.
Okay. And so the certification course, they go to the same website, the accessible.games.
Yeah, if they want to be certified and actually go to the certification class, there's a cost associated with that. And the pricing is on there as well, but it's all under APX. And it's APX, accessible player experiences. And we just use APX.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So if someone is interested in player panels, if they are a gamer and they're interested in being a part of the player panel, our network, then you would simply just go to accessible.games and there's a player panel tab and there are instructions on what you would need to do to be considered to be entered into our system. My next slide is just questions. If there are additional questions, I can look at you can read them off to me, or I can look in the chat.
I'll help you out there.
Okay.
I can help you out. I think we'll stop sharing.
Okay.
Thanks. That was awesome. As I told you before, this is not my area at all. So it's interesting. But Alvar, I guess Alvar, you said up here somewhere that you have been enlisting the support of AbleGamers. And so I thought that he might be a good story to share about how people can get connected to you all and make it useful in their lives. So I asked Alvar to put something together. Can we do that, Alvar? I don't know where you are. Let me look at you. Let me find him. Where are you? Huh, let me find you. Hang on. Does anybody see Alvar on the list here that we can put him on the screen? Let's see, Alvar. Oh, there you are. Okay. Can I ask you to come on, Alvar? I don't know. Okay, I'll wait till you put it in the chat if you want me to put you in.
Darlene, he put it in the chat.
Pardon me?
He put his comment in the chat.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks. Don't know where to look. All right, so Alvar wrote, I am an AAC user and type to communicate due to being autistic. I have never had good dexterity or reflexes, but it's become a lot more of a struggle in the past couple of years due to progressive physical disability. I got to the point where I couldn't even finish one race of Mario Kart due to numbness, spasticity, weakness, and pain, so I stopped playing, which was sad. I found out about AbleGamers and submitted a ticket last August since I wasn't sure what equipment would work for me. Earlier this calendar year, I got an email saying I had reached the top of the list. After connecting with my peer counselor and discussing my abilities and disabilities and gaming goals, he put together a system to allow me to game. I recently got a PS4 quad stick controller and 10 games from AbleGamers, and am now learning how to game with the accessible equipment. My peer counselor, Zach, was great, and overall my experience was very positive, and I highly recommend it.
That's great. Yeah, Zachary is a great peer counselor. He's one of our new peer counselors that came on board about 6 months ago. I'm so glad that you're having a great experience with them. That is one example from the peer counseling side. We do have a wait list, as you know, because I don't think there's another organization like us. No. So we are inundated with requests, and we're trying to go through as many requests as we can. And that's why peer counseling over the last year and a half or so has been partnering with rehab hospitals, because they've been actually training the trainer, and through the resources and equipment that we have at headquarters, we're able to send equipment to other facilities so that in the event that there are people that are closer. For example, we work with the Shepherd Center in Atlanta. I believe they work with a facility, a rehab facility in Kansas City. They're doing some work in Boston. They're trying to hit all the major cities so that they're able to reduce the amount that's on the wait list, because like I said, we can only support so many people. I know on peer counseling, on the peer counseling side, if you were to go to their part of on their page on ablegamers.org, they have an intake form, and they have a whole bunch of resources where if someone may just want information to get information and not have to talk to a peer counselor, you can actually get information right from the website on how you might be able to develop your own adaptive gaming system at home. But just bear in mind that we're a small organization and we're trying to support as many people as possible. So within the last year and a half or so, we've been trying to partner so that we can reach more people and support more people. But I'm so glad that you had a great experience, and Zach is a really good peer counselor. So I'm glad you're having fun.
And so that's a good example of how to get involved, right?
Mm-hmm. That's one way of getting involved, as well as, like I said, the player panels, if you are a gamer. It's all based on demand. We have work that comes down the pipeline, and it really depends on what the client is looking for. So in case you make it on, or you might become on our docket of players, we're going to definitely eventually get to you. It just depends on the work that's coming in and coming into the pipeline. Sometimes the work is it could be a VR provider that wants to test people who have Quest headsets, or in some cases, we've worked in the past where there have been clients that actually had the equipment and they wanted to ship the equipment to the player and test their equipment. And then of course they could send it back afterwards. So it just depends on the opportunity. One other thing I wanted to bring up is with the player panels, which is really nice, is there's an opportunity where people can develop a skill set in terms of if they're testing, they can leverage their communication skills, different things like that. And who knows, they can end up being a tester to some of these other larger studios who also sometimes hire temporary play testers. So you can definitely leverage those skills. If you play a game well, there's developed communication skills, and leveraging those type of soft skills, you can apply those to, if you're eventually looking for employment, you can leverage these experiences.
Nice. Now, someone was asking, and then we'll go to Tammy, but someone was asking, do you have to become certified to be a player in the database?
No, that the certification training that I was referring to is really something that a lot of the video game companies, they send their developers to get this type of training. And just a person with a disability who wants to be a part of the player panel, they do not have to have that certification.
Okay. Cool. Let's see, Tammy, I'm going to have you unmute. You have a question.
Okay, thank you. I was curious, you had mentioned resources, and do you have any lists available that would include companies that offer adaptive like controllers? I remember playing Crash Team Racing. I'm old school, but and I do remember Atari also, Tim, just saying. But as I've gotten progressively weaker with my disorder, I'm curious to know if there's like an accessible controller that would make it easier to, it's a lot of negotiation of moving the joystick, pushing the button at the same time, all of those things at once. And I didn't know if there were any adaptive type controllers you could recommend, or if you have a list.
What I can do, Tammy, is I can circle back with peer counseling, and I can definitely, I'll get your email address, or I can definitely just circle back with them to get the list, because they work with a lot of different providers. There's a lot of providers that come to us that want us to test things. And so I should talk with the occupational therapists that are on staff and find out, and I can get a list. That'd
be great. I mean, I missed that, my family, we'd come over and play the Crash Team Racing, and it was really fun to do. So I kind of missed that. So
sure. No, I can definitely, I made a note to myself, and I'll definitely reach out to them. I'll reach out to the peer counseling team tomorrow, and then hopefully they'll be able to give me a list, and then I can send it back to.
Yeah, I'll put my email in the chat.
Yeah,
okay, cool.
Do that. Awesome. And I can send it to you.
Okay, Cheryl, thank you.
You're welcome.
You want to say something? Okay.
It's really interesting to see the controllers and switches, because in the assistive technology world, and as a person with a disability, all of the equipments look so familiar of what I have at home and wheelchair to assist me. How difficult to get Microsoft and Sony and other platforms to make them understand that this is a need and not a want in the disabled community. And do you think that AbleGamers has made an impact at advancing the industry, since gaming has no primary language to play and to engage?
I think we have, like I said early on, Tim, Microsoft wasn't receptive to talking to us. They didn't really get it back 20 years ago. And I think it took a while, and I think through presentations at like the Game Developer Conference, that's an international conference where all the heavy hitters are at in San Francisco, that takes place every March, and other organizations, it took a while at meetings for them to see the value. We're developing a business case, like we've talked about, the market share, different scenarios like that. And now I think what's happening is that, players from back in the day, when you look at video game and the evolution of video games, a lot of those players are now older. So they really see the need of, well, I'm not as young as I used to be. I'm middle-aged now. And this stuff is just universal design principles. Like this makes sense. It's not a matter of either or. It just makes sense. And you should be designing something that can accommodate everybody. So, and I think in this world of, diversity, equity, inclusion, I think more and more organizations are understanding that. It took a while, but I think that we are making some strides. And yes, there's still room for improvement. But I see that Microsoft and Sony and the work that we've been doing, it seems like when the big AAA studios come together and start working, it's easier getting the smaller studios. But as you guys know in the news, there's been a lot of upheaval within the video game industry over the last year or two. There's been a lot of mergers, there's been a lot of layoffs, and unfortunately, this industry has been affected by a lot of change. But I still think that based on the work that we're doing and the calls that we get, we see that there's still a desire to make better games, accessible games for everyone. So we're proud of that.
Very cool. And Mia was just putting in the chat that the reminder to all of us that CSUN has their annual conference on assistive technology. Do you guys go to that, AbleGamers?
Yeah, we have presented in the past to CSUN before. I know that peer counseling, some of our representatives from the peer counseling side had presented. I think we weren't there last year and this year, but we were there the year before. I take that back. We were there last year. We just weren't there this year. But we try to be at a lot of different conferences. We're also we try to submit abstracts at like museums, because we know that a lot of organizations now are in the mix of, they want to gamify, they want some type of game. It's been interesting that like, even I remember like the New York Times had reached out to us, and we were like, oh, are we going to work with them, because they have Wordle? We're like, are they going to do they want to work? But
that was my game. That was my game.
Yeah.
I got Wordle.
But it didn't come to fruition. But it was just really cool that we had, so many different types of organizations are now reaching out and seeing that, yeah, we need to think about this. And so, like I said, it's the exposure is there. It's just a matter of catching up, and whether or not we're trying to do our due diligence and share as much free information as we can, because we are a nonprofit. We're not trying to rob anybody. We're trying to make sure that the accessibility is there, and that they're thinking about it from the beginning. That's ideally what we're trying to do. We're trying to work with studios when they're still in the conceptual phase, so that they've already kind of embedded accessibility from the very beginning, and not trying to retrofit, because so many organizations will reach out to us and we're like, your game is coming to market and it's not accessible. You're asking us to do an evaluation, and we're giving you this report, and you're overwhelmed because we're flagging all of this inaccessibility. Yeah. And they're like, and then you're going to end up doing patches. And so why not think about this from the very beginning? And what does that look like? So like I said, we're trying to do our part. We know there's some other organizations that look at accessibility from different angles, and we're just, trying to make a better world for everyone. So
are you seeing, I mean, this seems like a aha moment to me, but maybe not to them. Do you see what do you call them? Platforms or studios? The studios. Have any of them figured out that maybe we should just have our own people on staff so they can be a part of the inception team, like you're talking about?
It's really interesting how games are made, because there's from how, when we're interacting with people, a lot of times the developer or the lead developer who's responsible for the game has this desire to want to have an accessible game, but they're not the people that hold the purse strings. So then they have to talk to the money people. And then by the time they do all this talking back and forth, months have passed and they still have their deadline of getting the game out. So I think that, it's a lot of education. It's a lot of education, but there's also a disconnect in terms of power and who holds the purse strings. I hands down believe that most developers want to build a great product for everyone. It's just a matter of whether or not they have to reach whatever layers of bureaucracy within the studio. And if these studios are if it's like AAA studio like Sony, you're going through a lot of layers. You're going through a lot of layers. And now in this day and age, so many of these companies are merging. So like Microsoft just bought Activision Blizzard. So all of, you're dealing with just, all the legalities of just these corporate mergers on top of everything, and just all the bottleneck of bureaucracy. But they are making strides. It's just a matter of, we just have to do more, and we're trying to put out more information. So hopefully that maybe in 10 years, we're not really thinking about this anymore, that it's just automatic, that they're thinking about the framework, they're thinking about what potential barriers would exist or something like that ahead of time. That's our goal. And we want to do more case studies. We've had the opportunity recently to work with some studios from the very beginning, the ground floor, and be able, once they're even when they're storyboard level, which I think is the ideal time to build that culture of accessibility. So to be able to see the storyboards and to see the avatars that are being presented, or the scripts of the characters, and whether or not they're introducing somebody with a disability, and then being able to provide our services, whether it's sensitivity reading, having somebody, if they're talking about somebody with mental illness or whatever disability, having somebody be involved and being like, well, we don't believe you should be stating information like this. We should be considering XYZ. That's what we want to be able to release eventually, once the product is actually cleared. Because unfortunately, we work under NDA, and so much information cannot be shared until things are public. So
I'm not a gamer. And so the companies that develop the equipment, like what I would call the controls and such, they're the same companies that develop the programs, right? The games themselves.
Some
So do
different.
Does that department or those companies that are dealing with more of the access rather than the design of the app or the game, are they looking for ways to make sure that their technology is accessible to all?
Some have approached this and some have not. I think it's just like I said, some of the manufacturers, because that's who you're referring to, the manufacturers of the devices, not all of them make a game. There are just vendors that just make equipment.
Right.
And so we have partnered with some, and we encourage them, and we've been pushing, why not get feedback from people with disabilities if you're creating a new quad stick or whatever it may be, use our player panel to get that feedback. There's a lot of assistive technology equipment, a lot of assistive technology providers that use this that don't fall within the realms of gaming. The beautiful thing is we have this huge database. So we see it as a value to a lot of different industries to utilize, because if they're creating assistive technology products, for example, we collaborate, we network with RESNA, which is, I don't know if people are familiar with RESNA, but, Rehabilitation Engineering Society of North America, we try to collaborate with a lot of these different organizations and say, hey, by the way, we have this wonderful database that if organizations want to test different things, why not use our database to get, feedback? So that's what we've been doing.
Wow. Yeah, because it seems multi. I think, Tim, are you having a question, Tim? Or a comment? I'm not sure.
Cheryl, thank you so much. I know it's getting late for you over there.
I'm okay.
DVU really appreciates you. One last question. What is your favorite game? And are you going to E3?
I'm not going to E3. I'm not going to E3, but I play all different types of games. My preference is mobile games, just because of the convenience, and I am a adult caregiver. So sometimes I find I enjoy just playing anything on my phone because it's very quick and easy to play versus my sometimes I'll play Call of Duty with my husband, but you have to sit down and be there. I have to play. Whereas since I am a caregiver of aging parents, it's easier for me just to play things on my phone.
Well, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. And sorry I had technical difficulties in the beginning, you guys. I'm so sorry about that.
That was very humanizing because the rest of us have technical difficulties all the time. So the field has
So
been
great.
normalized.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to stay online for those of you here in California for a few more minutes here. But Cheryl, if you need to go back to home and get your life organized.
Okay.
Thank you again so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Everybody's thanking you in line here. So thanks. Bye. Great. That was good. So Kurt was saying that he's working on his AT certificate through CSUN. And so this was good information. Kurt, where do you live? In Sacramento. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. We need more informed AT people, right? Excellent. All right. Well, I'm going to stop highlighting us, Tim, for a second, if you can help with that and bring us to the group here. There we go. There we go. There we go. Cool. So I don't know who else is online here with us anymore, but what has been going on with everybody this past month or so? Anybody got any highlights or questions or problems they can use support with? Communication wise, access, anything like that? Tim's tired of talking or typing because he's been presenting all over the country, literally, for the past month. I'm sure he's going to write about it in our newsletter, right, Tim? No, maybe he's generating something right now. Nina, you got anything on the legal end that you want to share? The policy end?
Well, yeah, I don't want to jinx anything, but in this year we have a bill making on self-determination that just basically includes a lot of improvements. It's not a big sweeping bill, but it includes all the things that have been driving people crazy, and it was in appropriations, and so this was the time that I think it was Friday that all the bills, it's a Senate bill 1281, and so all the bills go there. They're all put on suspense in appropriations, and then in one big swoop, it's either they do pass on so they can go to the Senate floor, or they just die. And we passed 7-0, so our bill lives, and it's always very thrilling. And so that was a really, that's a really good thing. But now it has to get, be voted out of the Senate and go to the Assembly, where the process starts all over again, the Human Services Committee, and then appropriations. And so, we'll see.
Right.
We'll see, but it's exciting.
It's on its way.
on its way.
All right. I'm gonna, but Debbie, you have your hand raised, so I'm gonna ask you to unmute and share. Deborah, sorry. Maybe, I don't know, Deborah, maybe you didn't want to
There
raise
we
your
go.
hand.
How's
Oh,
that?
here we go. Okay, yeah,
Oh my
go.
goodness. Let me see if I can do my video. I'm outside right now. Oh, there we are. Okay.
Yeah.
No,
Hi.
cool. Okay, let me see if I know how to lower my hand. Hello. So
Hi.
I'm Deborah, and I'm here in Sacramento, and I just got out of the State Council on Developmental Disabilities council meeting. And I just want you to know that I spoke at public comments about how difficult. I mean, I basically said self-determination is a love-hate relationship. It loves my daughter, but it hates me. And I gave them some examples. And I threw Golden Gate Regional Center under the bus, and I threw GTI under the bus because they do not serve my daughter's needs. So that's been recorded for the state council meeting. And I also went on to say, if it wasn't for DVU, I would know nothing. That I get all of my information through DVU, not anywhere else. Nobody else reaches out and educates, informs, except for DVU. And I just wanted to share that with you. And I was heard.
Well, thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That is really great of you. And I go right ahead and throw them under the bus, because if people don't know, right? If you have one of the things, like, we thank you so much, because we would not have the information, the examples, the stories, if it wasn't for people participating in our, like this CAC, our SDP Connect, these connects. That's what they're for. So we hear what's going on in the world. How is this being implemented in the real world?
Yeah.
And that's what our bill is aiming to do, to try to clean that up and reflect the issues that have been plaguing everybody, because that's
Yeah.
a great way to put it, that it loves your daughter. Because I just, I worked for DVU. I just got, after, you would not believe how long it took. My son just started in
Oh, I can believe it.
in February. It's an amazing thing that's right here. Like, it's structurally so good. It's the implementation. And so we're doing everything we can. Things are, it's a tough budget year, but the good thing about our bill is it's not asking for anything that requires money. It's about getting rid of the barriers.
Interpretation.
Right? Getting
Absolutely.
rid of the barriers. So in how you administer this. So I really appreciate that so much, that,
Absolutely.
but keep sharing your stories, because,
Yep.
I don't mean to, highlight any particular company or regional center or whatever it is, but you've got to share the stories, or else
I
nothing
have
gets.
to be transparent. And what's interesting is, after I shared it, there was a gentleman from Orange County, LA area, a regional manager, something like that, and was telling me how the Spanish speaking community went to talk to people who are making decisions, and they poo-pooed their suggestions. And they said, yeah, we know what the barriers are, go away. And that was really unfortunate. And it's about GTI, and they're overstepping, and they're exclusive to this particular regional center. And it's not serving our clients, bottom line. And I would have never known that. If you shared that, it's like, oh wow, that's not okay. So anyway,
And
Well, thank you.
a lot
Thank you.
of people heard my story today, and I'm hoping that, just bringing awareness to everybody about what is happening, and it's just not okay. It's not okay. So anyway,
Well,
that's my story.
thanks. Thanks,
Bye.
Deborah. I think that I hope that when people are talking about needs and unmet needs and all of that, that people are throwing in their communication. and
Exactly.
access to communication. I mean, it really deserves to be the tagline to all comments made, right? Because it's such an unmet need, and people are still having to justify why they think they need that support, which is so wrong, especially since it's never been given by Regional Center. So in most cases, I might be overgeneralizing, but probably not much. So I hope that as we present all of these things and all of these stories, we add in there, as an example, access to communication and to communication needs and AAC needs. Go, Tim, and I've got a couple in the chat here too.
Darlene, and I would like to know what other topics Communication Access Connect should focus on in the future, because we are here to serve you as much as possible.
Thanks, Tim. So yeah, you can write those in the chat.
Did you find this session to be helpful on technology and gaming, or do you want more sessions on socializing or something else?
So write that in the chat and we'll grab that info. Alvar said a little while ago, does anyone have any information on the upcoming iOS accessibility updates, specifically iGames? And when they'll roll out, Tim must, and if they'll work with AAC apps and such. I just found out about it, but I don't know too much yet. I'm guessing Tim does. Go, Tim. And then you guys can read, Janika wrote an example of agreement while Tim's generating his response. I fully agree on this example, and it seems so familiar. It is more of implementation and accessibilities to appropriate information. There may be more parity in getting all of the accessibilities to all of these education and awareness. Thank you so much for this wonderful discussion. I'm leaving now. I'm so sorry. Okay, bye. Thanks for comments. I'll get to you witness. After Tim, we'll go to Vladimir Valdamitra. Sorry if I'm saying that wrong, which I'm sure I am. And William wrote, yes, we have been giving input about access and AAC's unmet needs to the master plan meetings. The last meeting they had the chat open, the whole meeting. That is progress. Okay, so, and then the question is, does anyone know anything about DDS stipends? Okay, and then Tim, go.
Alvar, I'm working on getting someone from Apple to be on a future session on iOS and the new accessibility.
Okay, and okay, that would be great. And they'll only talk about what's currently out, of course. They're Apple, everything's top secret. But that's all we need, right? Cool. And does anyone know anything about DDS stipends?
For the service providers, that's what, if that's what the commenter is asking about, that we did an SDP Connect on the DDS stipends for providers who are serving self-determination participants, and that is on DVU's YouTube channel. So you can see the SDP Connect. You can get there through the website or just Google it. But you can watch that session, and it covers the DDS also on the DDS website. You can also find, they just did, not just, but fairly recently they had a webinar on it, and so you can see that there. It's a little bit complicated, but you got it. If you're interested in having your service provider take the training to get the stipend, it's done by June 30th. So they won't get a payout for another like 90 days, but start looking for that information now, sooner rather than later.
Okay, Eric did put that YouTube channel post in the chat. Go, Tim.
Nina, if you are a work group for DDS, self-advocates can get a stipend for each work group that they attend.
Oh, those DDS stipends. Wow. I know that. That's great. Oh, that's right. You got some recently, right?
Okay, so I think that, does anyone know anything about this? So I guess if you are, say that again, Tim, what you just said, is it still there? Sorry. It was fine. Oh, you had to rewrite it? I'm sorry. Because it was fine. It just needed to reprocess it.
If you are on a work group for DDS, self-advocates can get a stipend for each work group that they attend. I never got one, but I think it's $20 per work group and a maximum of $90 a month.
Okay. Thanks for that. And Valdemitra, you want to unmute if you want to?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yes, I was calling in reference to, I wanted to ask about this stipend. I'm sorry I got kicked off a minute there in case you guys started it. But, you know, DDS had this training for
Yes.
workers. They were supposed to do this training and then they would get this stipend for $600 or something like that.
Yeah.
So I have two workers that have done the training. They did the training and completed it back in November. Never got paid for it. I'm with GTI Regional Center, so they kept telling us they had to get whatever they had to figure out how they were going to get paid or something. That's what I was told. So I was told that for months. I got in touch with the regional center. The regional center put me through to this lady named Tiffany Swan, that's supposed to be the head in that area. She told me that they had got through their training. She told me that they had got some type of approval. I don't remember exactly what the approval was. And that as of April the 12th, it was supposed to be processed. We still haven't heard anything, so I got back in contact with this lady, Miss Tiffany Swan, which is at the regional center. I'm with the San Diego Regional Center, by the way. And the last we heard, now it's gone back to DDS for their approval. And I said, wait a minute, you told me that it was going to be in the paycheck as of April 12th. So I have lost my worker because she feels like it's me, which I have nothing to do with this money coming or not coming. She was planning on a trip to England and totally messed her up because of this, because she did not just one training, she did both of them. So I have no idea what to tell her. I'm getting all this runaround from everyone. So I was wondering if anybody can help me.
Tim's typing, but Nina.
I guess I mean that is really late. I have heard, I mean, in what DDS says and what, you know, sort of the general rule of thumb is, it's supposed to be, payment is supposed to be, but it's not, they always say be patient because it tends to be a lot longer. It's supposed to be like 90 days from completing the training and, you know, sending in your info or whatever. But
Right.
I, you know, so it's, it's like, it's very clear that it's just so long, and you know, it's impossible to know who's messing it up, but it's definitely not you, right? It's ultimately, you know, ultimately the FMS is the one who like disperses the money. They get the payment, and then they pay the worker for the training. If you're talking about the self-determination one, I would,
Right.
meantime, I would, you know, for what it's worth, it can't hurt, and they may sometimes loosen things up. I would absolutely call and I would call and write to the ombuds, the SDP ombuds office or person. I don't even know if it's a person now, but there is an office there. And I would definitely do that and report this for sure. And I would also, you know, I mean, this is just crazy. And I'm so sorry you lost your worker, but this is good to know. This is good information to know, you know, what is going on out there and how people, this is just ridiculous. I mean, it's a great thing when it works. I do know some people who said that their workers, you know, did get paid and did. So I'll let Tim go.
Tomorrow, we have SDP Connect at 4:30. That's very wrong. They should have payout within 90 days. My staff all got paid within 60 days. The FMS is responsible for payment along with your regional center. Come to SDP Connect tomorrow and ask.
Okay, I will. Thank you, Tim.
Okay, nobody's putting any ideas in the chat, you guys. And now at the end, I should write down, I do write these down, but I should remember them when I'm preparing, because Tim and I write down ideas as we're talking, and we're like, hey, there's an idea. Well, one idea is to have Gloria back. Hey, did you guys hear, for those of you who are using AA, I just heard this, I don't know any of the details, maybe people online do, but apparently, you know, Proloquo, AssistiveWare has for Proloquo and a subscription format that you can purchase training and stuff. And then I think this week or today even, TD Snap has gone to a subscription model as well. So, and again, I'm just using a conversation as my input at this point, but I haven't researched it. But apparently it's $17 a month for the subscription, or like 200 something for the year, like around 200 for the year, which I get from a business point of view. But in my gut, I think, you mean you'd be taking away somebody's voice like you own it? Like, that part makes me feel weird about it, you know? I get what they're doing from a business point of view, but I feel weird that that for some reason it's become okay to possibly use it. And I go back and forth because that's the kind of person I am in my mind on pros and cons and good cop, bad cop kind of thing. But nutshell, my final conclusion on that topic is we have to really make sure that when people get assessments, or if you're going to have to upgrade your technology in any way, that the funding for the subscription for the app, if that's the format people are going to start using, is put into your budgets. If you use regional center budgets to buy things for like a communication app, you used to just buy the app, right? And you'd say, oh, it's $250 or whatever. But now it's going to be a yearly expense. So for sure, the AAC commitment's not done just because you had the assessment and you got the technology, right? Now there's going to be an ongoing expense that we need to make sure we address in your budgets. That was my one thing I did remember today.
Yeah, I mean, that's good to remember for sure, right? Because it's,
yeah, school budgets or regional center budgets, or even insurance companies. I don't know how it's going to get worked out, but yeah, people are gonna, you can't be stuck with that bill unless you can't afford to and you want to be stuck with that. But we can't assume that people can fund that for their communication, even then they have the device, you know? So another way to advocate. Tim's typing, so I'm not going to cut him off yet.
While Tim types, did we do this already? Maybe I dreamt that we did, but a session on AI and AAC and just AI issues in general and how it may intersect,
We
communication.
didn't. Tim was talking about that. I came to today's CAC and left a meeting on AI and, and communication.
I just think, how do we not,
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I'll write it on my list, Nina. Thank you for that.
Darlene, maybe we should have a communication access connect on that. I get the business model and new updated features all the time, but it's almost like putting a leash on a dog, and even worse because we are bound to an app to communicate.
Yeah, I know. It's a good cop, bad cop kind of. I don't think a whole session could cover to talk about this. I'd be annoyed. But I looked at it in my mind. I was thinking, well, what if you're a person who needs medication for a heart condition? Then you are dependent on a prescription and on someone else paying that prescription every month, right? So I guess it fits in that model. I don't know, it just feels weird.
Somehow
Just feels-
communication, it feels so basic that I don't know. It feels like worse.
I know it just feels weird. Yeah. Alvar says Proloquo for text has been my app of choice, but due to typing issues, it's been harder. That's one we're going to talk about, right, Tim? I just got a year of Proloquo for half price during April. I hadn't tried it before because of the subscription model. Proloquo to Go, which is similar, is still able to be bought once for all, but requires setup. So that's why I decided to try Proloquo first. Proloquo is actually, even though it sounds like it would be first, it's now the new version. It seems weird that they've reduced the name now. So Proloquo is the subscription product. I attend an AAC users chat every other week that's put on by AssistiveWare, and they said the subscription fee is because of the cost of updates and stuff. But yeah, I agree, it's tough. That's what I would assume, because how are they going to survive if everybody buys one and then they're done, right? And they have to continue updating. So I get it. It just feels weird. But one topic that Tim and I have been tossing around for a little bit here is AAC and the aging. All of us are aging, right? That's an everybody experience. And so as all of us age, our bodies change. And just we're thinking we want to hold, and if you know somebody who's a great speaker on this topic, we would love to have them. Tammy, you know somebody? I'll have you unmute, because we think that it's a thing people should start talking about.
It's actually I kind of joined this group for some of these issues. Recently I was informed my respiratory is decreased to the level that I may need to have some daytime support. So I was obviously, with the work I do as an independent facilitator, worried, how am I going to do speaking? So this is very interesting to me to hear all this. So while I think I may know a couple people, I'm not positive, don't quote me on that, but I think this is a great topic, because things change medically with people. And so now I'm trying to put on my IF hat internally to figure all this out. So like I've thought about eye gaze could be an option for me, like for at least email and stuff like that, where I'm not having to use my voice as much. But yeah, I think this is a great idea, because there's many people as we age, have different impairment related issues where things may progress or what have you. So, but
Yeah.
I'll put some feelers out. I'm very strong in the muscle disease arena, and many of us
Mhm.
have those types of scenarios. A lot of older folks too. So there may be some folks that I've not yet tapped their resources, but I will definitely keep you in mind when I reach out. So
Okay, I'll put you down as someone to talk to. So
yeah.
I think that you all in this generation are the first generation, because before you there wasn't technology around. So this is now you're again you're going to be ahead of the game. You're going to be at the beginning of the wave. But I think there's a wave. I think we got to think about this. So we'll do more on that. We've got 1 minute to close out here, so we need to say goodbye. But Alva wrote in the chat too. He's in his 30s, but changing needs and adapting. Anybody's body can change at any time, Alvar. So thank you all for joining us. Our next session, William, I should always have you prepare this for me, but our next session will be what, June 18th, is it, William? He'll know.
June 18th?
Is it June 18th?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
June 18th. All right. So our next session will be June 18th. And we will keep you posted on which one of these topics we get organized. But again, if you have any wants or good leads, send them our way. Share the info. Thank you for joining us today. It was a fun topic.
See you later and thank you.